That classic theme can only mean one thing: James Bond 007. And since the 25th James Bond movie, No Time to Die, has been postponed due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, we decided we'd have a look at some of our favourite James Bond movies anyway. I'm Royce.
And I'm Joshua.
And this is the Geeks Review. Today we're talking James Bond and playing some of the music from those films as well.
I'm going to take us back to 1989 with License to Kill, the last of the Dalton era.
Oh yes, because Timothy Dalton, he was a James Bond for only 2 movies, wasn't he?
2 films, The Living Daylights and License to Kill. They weren't well received, but their effect can be very much felt in the modern day Bond films.
That's definitely what I felt, yeah, watching it. It felt very much like a modern Bond film in many ways.
More grit, the prototype, if you will.
Yes, definitely.
License to Kill starts off with Bond on the way to a wedding. There he and his well-known stayer character of the series, Felix Leiter, picked off to go and try and stop this drug lord and then finally arrest him that the CIA have been after. As usual, they capture the villain, they set up the going conflict. You think, oh, it's probably going to go into something different, and Felix Leiter is mortally wounded by getting fed to a great white shark with the loss of his left leg and his wife being shot.
Not very nice.
No. Bond vows revenge and leaves MI6 to hunt down Franz Sanchez down in South America. He is joined by CIA agent Pam Bouvier. Together, they try and topple Sanchez's drug empire.
It's definitely proto-Craig, as you said. That intro was next level, because this was a time before computer generated, and they must have used models. But
models or practicals. It was pretty much what you see is what you get. It's not done on a computer.
No, and that was one thing that this film was praised for, I read. And I can see why, because the opening has them in a helicopter chasing down Sanchez, who's in his little Cessna plane. Bond rappels down out of the helicopter, grapples onto the back of the plane.
Oh, it was a Coast Guard helicopter, so they've got the winch to pick people up from. He
attaches it to the tail, and they basically rip the plane out of the sky. And then they parachute down and land at Felix's wedding. It's really wow, that's intense. And because it's all real, it really sets it apart from the films which had come before. I'd only seen the first 2 Connery films. I'm not the biggest Bond fan.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, and it's a huge departure, even Brosnan were a bit more camp than this. This really was what would set the trend for some spy films to come, like Bourne.
He's a very rough and tumble Bond. He's quite scruffy even. I remember looking at his hair, and he's, you think of Bond and he's very clean, he's
prim and proper. He's the antithesis of what you would expect a gentleman spy to be, or a Cold War agent.
Yeah.
Someone who blends in, not a field operative.
Because this was the last film to really come out when the Cold War ended, or was it the first one to come out?
Just after the Cold War ended. It came out 2 years before the fall of the USSR.
I did read that they were struggling to figure out exactly what they could do for a villain. And they chose a Colombian drug dealer because they figured he was the biggest.
He was Argentinian. Well, the film mostly takes place in Argentina anyway, once he gets into South America.
Sorry, minor error there.
Yeah.
Not to say all South American countries are the same.
And here's the funny thing too, this was 1989. This was a few years after the Falklands War.
Right, yes. Oh, yeah, that's a big
stepping point in modern British military history. Very interestingly timed.
So you are a bigger Bond fan than I guess you've seen them all.
I would say I've been watching it for a bit longer. I'm not the fellow who goes out and compares it to the books, but I'm quite proud of my Bond collection at home.
Yeah. Well, the books are quite different.
Absolutely,
they're
very different.
Night and day, really.
The differences are astronomical, particularly with the Connery era.
So what makes this film, then, your favourite Bond film? Because, you got 24 to pick from.
What this really makes it shine is the grit. The fact that it's not bogged down by, I'm going to take over the world, Mr. Bond. The Spectres, the supervillains and all that. My order goes License to Kill, Man with the Golden Gun, Moonraker, because it's just absolutely ridiculous, and Tomorrow Never Dies. The introduction of Daniel Craig is Skyfall's on there as well.
Yeah.
But being edged out by Casino Royale, because, hey, this is the first time we get Casino Royale and having it be an official Bond film.
Yeah.
But here, it's not bogged down by the times. It's Bond on his own. He doesn't have Q branched. Yes, he's got Q to help him, but even then, his gadgets are limited. He's got a Polaroid that does X-rays and shoots lasers, a hand camera that's meant to be this high-velocity sniper rifle, C4, well, plastique, toothpaste with a cigarette lighter as a ignition. And as it goes through, Bond isn't using this. He's doing this with his wits, his cunning. Yeah, he pulls out the Walther every so often, but even then, he doesn't use it as much.
It really is a revenge film, and he is left on his own, and it's him really making the most of all the skills that he's got.
Making use of the 00 training that he has. A lot of the Bond films you see where he's infiltrating, he's sabotaging the bad guy while making it look like he's helping them. Here, he's accidentally helping Sanchez without realizing it. When Sanchez is meant to be having a meeting, he blows the windows of Sanchez's office and gets ready to fire the high-velocity rifle, and he's then picked up by Hong Kong agents working with MI6 to take down bloody Sanchez. Like, well, hang on, you're Bond. What are you doing here? You're meant to be arrested. He's just blindly stepping through it, and it's working in his favor. But at the same time, it's really helping Sanchez. He's just blundering his way through these accidental problems.
That was a really interesting twist. How it seemed like these other villains were actually other agents, trying to do it. And then how they get taken out, and then Bond has to lie further in order to prove his loyalty to Sanchez.
In order to get closer to actually deliver the killing blow.
That finale as well, with the trucks in the desert.
One of the most visceral deaths of a villain, but not to mention the tanker truck chase.
Yes.
He's got a tanker filled with not just gasoline, but cocaine.
Yeah, and they've developed this formula to help them separate the cocaine from the petrol, the gas, when it's taken out, which is... It's funny because the film feels so grounded.
It does.
And then it goes and does something like that, and you're like, wow, okay, that's...
That's the one thing we can't believe here. I mean, I can kind of believe it. They're crafty.
Oh, of course, it does. I do believe it, but it is quite funny because it is quite out there. And, I mean, it really is quite an interesting idea, that one. And it does lead to a really spectacular chase, Mad Max-ish.
Mad Max-esque, yes. Yeah. And the death was just... I won't spoil it, but...
And planting and payoff as well.
Yes.
To get the thing that sets that in motion earlier on in the film.
Chekhov's slider.
Exactly. And the stunts as well with the trucks. I mean, there's a stunt where the truck is... I'd say it's up on 2 wheels, but it's a semi-trailer, so it's up on... How many wheels does a semi-trailer have? It's up on its side, anyway.
12.
Yeah, and balanced on its side, and that was real. Yes. They were apparently had made a rig to do it if they couldn't, but then the stunt driver pulled it off, and it is just like, holy cow, that's...
All to avoid one Stinger missile.
It is quite fun, I would say. And it is quite shockingly violent. Like, there is a scene where a man is trapped in a pressure chamber, which was like, wow, okay, I didn't expect that.
You think, okay, this is just going to be torture, he's going to let him out. Nope.
And even if, he was going to kill him, I didn't expect that kind of a death.
Oh, no.
Because he swells up and then you just got like raspberry jam on the inside.
I think what really set how the tone of this film was going to be was when Lyda got fed to the Great White.
It's really intense, that scene.
It is.
It keeps building that tension and intensity until it just, all comes out at the end. Huge scale.
It's a lot more memorable for the things that it does. Like, looking back, it'd been probably about 5 years since I saw License to Kill when I first saw it. And the one thing that sticks out of my mind is when Bond finds the corpse of Felix Leiter with a note sort of stapled to him, covered in blood, and it says he disagreed with something that tried to eat him. Look, that's a message. If you want to intimidate someone and spark a revenge story, that's how you do it.
Much better than, leaving a naked Gemma Arterton on your bed covered in oil.
Than gold, yeah.
Or gold, That's right, that was a homage to gold. The gold death in
Goldfinger.
Yes, okay, now I got that.
This is where Dalton shines, is that it's a more grounded level of Bond.
Definitely.
It's not the super spy, it's the man who has to work on the wits in his training.
And really set
the tone for films to come.
Definitely.
Granted, Brosnan did a return to form going back to something a little bit more manufactured, but his first, I believe... If it wasn't for The Living Daylight, License to Kill, we wouldn't have gotten Daniel Craig's Bond and how he acts. And without GoldenEye with Pierce Brosnan, his first film, we wouldn't have got films like Skyfall.
So after the Dalton era began Pierce Brosnan, which really for me was the first Bond I was aware of. And it sort of set the tone for the next 10 years of Bond films, really. It's sort of, there's a nostalgia cycle which happens every 30 years. The 90s paid homage very heavily, once all the grunge was done, to the 1960s. So we have a return to the Connery-esque, films, very slick, very stylish, very clean, very, suave, sexy, almost silly in some things. I think of,
places,
those films did sort of trail off, I guess, in popularity and, critical. But something happened, in the early 2000s that really sort of changed the way that action films were made for the next decade and a bit, and that was The Bourne Identity. Matt Damon starring, sort of spy, there was definitely a resurgence in the gritty, the real. We sort of see it with Batman Begins. But as for Bond, it definitely had an impact upon him with the casting of Daniel Craig in his first film, which was Casino Royale, which was my second Bond film, and one which I really felt a connection to, because you have a love interest in that, Vesper Lynd, played by Eva Green, who I actually felt a connection to, and there's a connection between him and her that is quite believable, and it is quite
very
sad.
Reminiscent of the George Lazenby film, Her Majesty's Secret Service.
But as for Daniel Craig, I mean, Casino Royale really brought Bond back and made him sort of be taken seriously, because like I said, Brosnan, I guess, sort of felt like he did have that Batman downfall, like with the Schumacher films. But then Quantum of Solace was, I guess...
It's alright.
It's okay, but it's not very memorable. I can't remember much about it. But then the big film, which everyone goes on about, is Skyfall 2012, which sees Bond facing up against an ex-MI6 agent, Silva, played by Javier Bardem, who has it in for M, played by Judi Dench. It is very grounded, and it starts off again, throws you right into the middle of the action, as most Bond films do, like we do with GoldenEye. But this film, because it is just so, like I said, grounded, that's a term we keep using here, but you can really see the influence of Timothy Dalton. If they had the cash back then, and the technology...
Dalton's era would have been the dominant force. It would have been more remembered than Connery, more iconic than Moore.
I think so, yeah. I could almost imagine Dalton in the opening scene, which is like this massive chase, which is, on motorcycles through Turkey, I believe it is.
Yes, Turkey.
Across rooftops and then onto the top of a train, and then he's in an excavator on the back of a train, rips the back of a carriage off, and then, leaps in. And
all for a USB.
All for a USB. Well,
A USB with a list of NATO agents.
Yeah, and then it's seemingly... I mean, it was all in the teaser footage and the trailers, but Bond is shot by Moneypenny, played by Naomi Harris. And
who we didn't know at the time with Moneypenny.
No, that's the thing. I went in knowing she was Moneypenny, because it's out there now. I mean, the film is 7 years old.
It's 7 years old. I mean, spoilers are here, but, a lot of Skyfall can be seen as a progenitor to the starting of the cycle all over again.
Yes, because this is really the film that brings everything in. I mean, Felix Leiter was in the first two films, played by Jeffrey Wright of Westworld fame. And this was the one where we get Moneypenny, where we get Q, where we get, a heavier emphasis on M and all these other MI6 things. I mean, MI6 is ripped away by a terror attack in the beginning of the film and was sort of confined to the tunnels underneath London that were used by
Churchill bunkers,
Yeah, and that's really cool. I really like that. Yeah, it really does feel like, okay, now he's properly Bond. It's only taken 6 years to get here, because...
And even then, he's not the Bond we would expect, because he's not ready for the field again.
No,
he's shaky. He's unable to keep up. He fails on pretty much every test, especially the psychological.
Yeah, and they still send him out. And then this. You go like, okay, he's been told he's ready. And then the action scene which immediately follows is where he's following this assassin. And he gets into this elevator.
Same assassin he was following in Turkey.
Yes. The assassin gets in the elevator, goes up to the top of this very tall building in Hong Kong, I believe it is.
Yes.
And Bond runs and he clings onto the bottom of the elevator and goes up, 80-something floors. And you can see he's sort of struggling, but it's almost like he believes this placebo effect. He thinks, I'm ready, I can do this. Oh, I'm struggling a bit, but I can do this. And that's sort of what helps him, pushes him, I think, motivates him. Because I think it's very subtle, but it does feel like he is getting older. He's shaking, he's wavering. I mean, even Daniel Craig back then was saying, this is probably the last Bond film I'm going to do.
That's a bold-faced lie.
Here we still are, 8 years later with No Time to Die not coming out till November. I really do like this. You don't even have the villain show up.
No, he doesn't pop up until halfway through the film, which became the norm for a lot of modern films, particularly when they were doing the criminal genius type.
Oh, definitely, yeah. This is very much of its time. It's like, you know, you're going to got the evil criminal
Again, it's
genius.
also a very well-known Bond trope.
Yeah, but he gets captured. I mean, even with Sanchez in License to Kill, he gets captured right at the beginning. Of course, he gets broken out.
Yeah.
That's
But I mean,
a
the
trope
Bond
here.
meeting the villain is a very Connery and Moore era. Because...
Well, Doctor No, he didn't meet him until like the last 20 minutes or so, didn't he? But yeah, there's, again, like the trope, you know, we've gone and got the trope of the, you know, the evil genius that gets held in a plastic or a glass prison and he breaks free, like we see it with...
It's what he wants.
Yeah, that's right, he wants to be captured so he can enact his great plan. It's the same with Loki in the Avengers, it's the same with the Joker in the Dark Knight.
It's a little bit too familiar, but at the same time, I believe Salva's plan is a lot more...
concrete and believable, I think.
concrete and believable, because he's doing this not out of a, I must do it. He's doing it because he felt abandoned by the agency.
It's revenge again.
And about, not from, to Bond, which a lot of these films are, you know, you look at GoldenEye, it's 006 going against the world, but mainly, you know, you left me to die, James, screw you. It's against M.
Yeah.
Which makes it more believable, and the film does something that no Bond film has done before, particularly with Judi Dench's era, as M. M's the Bond girl.
In a way, yeah, she is. And Judi Dench is great in this.
She's amazing.
It is almost sad to see her go.
And it's not even something grandiose. She just bleeds out in the end.
It's not a heroic death. It's not, you know, blaze of glory. It's just very matter of fact. And I read that she wasn't knowing going in that she was going to die. I mean, she read the script and she's like, "Oh, you're killing me off. That's a shame."
That's interesting. I mean, I could have done this for a couple more years. No, Judy, we're done.
She could have, really.
Yeah, she really could have.
It's a shame, but it's good. It is really quite emotional. And one thing that surprised me was it does delve a little into James's backstory. I mean,
Something
Skyfall...
we knew nothing about up until this point, other than he's an orphan. His parents died in this mountaineering accident.
Yeah. And the title of this film, Skyfall, comes from his old family estate up in Scotland. I thought it's very bold of them to do this. I mean, this is the 23rd Bond film.
Yes.
And it's sometimes you do get long-running institutions like Doctor Who, Bond being one of them, where you think, can they do that? Can they change the law? But I mean, this is its own
really add
canon.
or do something like that?
And it really works within the context of this film because, I mean, you know, who knows if this is the same for Connery or Lazenby or Moore. It works for Craig.
It plays into Craig's character, and with the previous generations, you feel like Bond is more of an alias.
Oh, yeah. Like, you know, it is, because that's the theory.
And what the previous Bonds did is the cover they must continue.
Yeah. Because, I mean, M continues on from the Brosnan era.
Absolutely.
She first appears in GoldenEye. And it's quite surprising in a way. And they never really address it.
No.
Which is good, I think.
I believe...
Oh, no, of course, there's past films, like I think even George Lazenby like says in the opening credits, oh, you know, I'm something, you know, he refers to the other guy being Sean Connery.
Judi Dench brings it to her own.
Definitely.
And she continues to go out on her own beautifully, even though it was a very somber moment. And which is what I believe adds to Skyfall's credit. I'll give it this. It's probably the most enjoyed film I have one of the two most enjoyed films I have for the Craig era.
Well, you can only go so high before you have to come down, I guess.
Yeah, and...
I will say, though, because I only did watch this film for this review, and, you know, heard so much about it, and I'm not the biggest Bond fan, but I definitely think this is the one I enjoyed the most, because I did feel that Casino Royale, which is actually slightly less long than this one, I did feel that dragged a little in places, but this one sort of feels like it's always going, even in the slow moments.
There's motion to it, there's agency to it.
And it is good, but I did sort of... I'm not too sure what I expected, but I do enjoy this, and I definitely think it's one of my favourites, which is why I'm talking about it now.
One of the things that unfortunately do fall to the wayside is the subplot of the NATO agent name reveals.
Yeah, well, which I guess they can't really do much about, because they do say that, you know, they're getting killed, you know, left, right and centre, and they need to quicken the pace and stop Silver before he releases more information that compromises everyone.
And it's the need to capture that really helps in his plot. Which is why it's a good and believable plot. You know, it's not just we got to stop this guy and then that's it. It stops. It's no, we got to get his thing, regardless if he's alive or not.
Yeah. You looking forward to No Time to Die?
I am looking exceptionally well to No Time to Die because it will, I believe, from what I've seen, will delve more into Bond's history and
even
sort
more
of bring him down further than what Spectre was meant to.
Well, he is hoping.
Because Spectre did a surprising twist which I'm still on the fence about, where it made him and Blofeld adopted brothers. Because, and Blofeld's not even his real name. But still, Christoph Waltz.
Christoph Waltz being his most Christoph Waltzy.
Unfortunately.
I am looking forward to No Time to Die purely because it is co-written by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's a fantastic writer who's really come into her own in the last few years. She made the comedy series Fleabag and also wrote the first series of Killing Eve, which is a great British spy series.
Maybe it'll work out here.
Fingers crossed. Anyway, this has been the Geeks Review. To sign us off, this is Skyfall by Adele, the big Oscar-winning theme song. We'll be back next week, and hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.